All right, it's into Clinch with Greg Nelson Team Academy, where we tackle and grapple everything martial arts. Right, first I want to give a shout out to our zebraathletics.com, our outfitter, our whole gym, our mats, our wall pads, our cage panels, bag racks, heavy bags, cleaning products, everything. They're the place to go. All right, the WTBA at thaiboxing.com. Guru Dan Inasanto at inasanto.com. CSW with Eric Paulson at ericpaulson.com. And our Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu roots going back to Pedro Sauer at pedrosauer.com. All right, today we're going to be talking about mental toughness. Kind of a subject out of my own soul and heart. Easy. Love it.
Yeah, so first off, let's get a good idea of what we mean when we're talking about mental toughness. I think sometimes people use mental toughness to mean, being able to endure tons of pain or being able to do things you don't want to do. But sometimes, that can be like a handicap even, right? Like people are numb to pain, and pain is a sign that you should stop doing stuff. So how do you kind of draw the line when you define mental stupidity or mental toughness or that type of thing?
Well, I'd have to say for me, mental toughness is having the ability to do something you may not want to do, that you have to do, that's necessary, and you have to have a lot of discipline, and you have to put the time and the effort to do it, and it's going to be something that's going to benefit you. You could ignore it and take a different path, or you could be mentally tough and endure and go through what you got to go through to get the result that you want to have.
Right. Do you think it's innate? Do you think people are born with different measures of it? Do you think it can be trained?
I believe it can be trained, for sure.
Right.
Definitely. But your desire for something is going to drive your mental toughness, I think, too. Your desire to win, to train super hard. I feel like we pushed ourselves so hard sometimes to the point where we were injured or sick. It went beyond, being smart about being mentally tough.
Yeah, for me, I would also say that, when you know what you're going after, and you have a goal and a result that you want to accomplish, kind of the things that you have to do to get there almost become irrelevant. You just got to do them. You got to push through and get after it. And that's another thing about being mentally tough. You just got to come in and get going and do the stuff that has to get done, sometimes when you feel like it and sometimes when you don't.
Well, there has to be a reason, right?
I mean, yeah. I mean, there has to be something. There has to be an outline goal of some sort.
What was your reason when you were really sick to keep fighting, to not give up?
Well, I tell you, at that point in time, I think there's a multitude of things. But one of them was through all the years of athletic training and pushing myself and enduring, sometimes injury and pushing through that and grinding, and you are who you are. You fight. The other thing is, I definitely had a motivation. Had my kids.
Yeah.
And
that's what I always feel like
they were a huge motivation because, man, I wanted to see those guys grow up, and that literally was my worst feeling of despair too, was not being able to see them grow up. So that was something that I had to blast through and fight through, and there was obviously a lot of pain, but
that helped push you through that. That
heck yeah. And there's just something that you are what you are, right? And we just pushed so hard for so many years and all the things that we did, and it was like almost a contest. Who is going to continue to go harder, faster, more, and try to push yourself to your limit? And that develops a certain mental toughness without even thinking about it, right? That's the goal.
Yeah, I think martial arts, like the way I define mental toughness is that you have the mental capacity to face pain in the right amount or face the fight or flight response in the right amount, because everybody deals with those things in life, and you learn how to talk to yourself. You learn what to say to yourself in your head when, for example, it's the last round of conditioning or right before a competition event. You learn the right words to face those type of emotions, and that happen. Sports martial arts is a good way to do that. But what about for people that have never done hard conditioning, or done competition, or done stuff that's scary, like public speaking, or like if they were rock climbing and they had fear of heights? How can they get tougher to do those things? Like, what's a good strategy? Like, should I just act as if? Because sometimes if I act as if, I'm lying to myself, and I'm going to get hurt, or I'm going to make a fool of myself, right?
Well,
So
I think a huge part of that, let's do something that's not like physically dangerous, but it's one of the greatest fears in the world, is public speaking.
Mhm.
And you got to get up there at some point in time and do it. And I'll tell you this, the majority of the public speakers that you talk to or have been, listening to, will tell you when they started, they sucked. They made a bunch of mistakes. They were nervous. They had to learn how to do it. And they did it step by step, and they just jumped in there and they did it. And maybe it wasn't a giant group at first, but they got in front of people and they spoke. And sometimes they got in front of people that they knew,
Mhm.
and just worked their way up. But almost all of them say that they weren't just natural public speakers.
So the basic idea is to start small and do little bits at first, because if you try to go right for the big thing right away, like if you were going to do rock climbing and you tried to climb Mount Everest right away, like that's not a good strategy. You're going to start on smaller things first and just get on base, and do lots of shorter, progressively harder things to get tougher.
Well, you mentioned, what you're telling yourself in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you've never done anything where you really have to face that fight or flight. And so what is your mind, what's your mental self-talk?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like once you start getting a hold of that, that's going to be the first step of being able to face those fears, is figuring out what you're telling yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think people get in the habit of making excuses all the time. Like, the brain tends to make excuses, especially if you're around a lot of, pardon my French, but losers, right? If you hang around a lot of people that make excuses and have poor self-image and are negative, you're going to start to think and talk like that as well. So, I think that's really key to take the reins, is to be around other positive people, other mentally tough people, because that's going to help and change your attitude and not make as many excuses.
Yeah.
Because I still find myself making excuses.
Always.
It's a constant.
All the time.
It's a constant battle to take accountability for what you're doing.
You constantly have to check the voice in your head.
Yeah.
It'll come back negative. I almost feel like it's the default.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I tell you this, probably going back to the worst part of my battle ever, you're dealing with cancer, I would constantly be being bombarded by negative thoughts.
Yeah.
You're not going to see your kids grow up. You're going to die. And you had to fight those. If you didn't fight those, you give up.
Take over.
Take over. And I knew from obviously all the athletic training and all the other stuff, your brain can only hold one thought at a time. So if you allow that thought to start to grow and start to push, and you don't do anything about it, well, that's where things start to fall apart. And so I remember when I was doing something that would physically really tire me out, just exhaust me, if you started thinking about that fatigue, that was a tough day, right? So I always would sub-vocalize to myself constantly, like, say, example, doing Thai pads. In my mind, and sometimes even out loud, I'd be like, you got to pivot more, turn over on your shoulder. So I'd be constantly sub-vocalizing, not thinking about how tired I was. And then we'd get done with our sets of threes, and then you'd stop, and then you'd just, oh my gosh, that was a tough round. And then you'd get your breath back, and you'd go right after it again. And I always thought that the day that you came in, that mentally you just were, those were the tough days, right? Because you can push through sore legs, you can push through that burn in your lungs, but when your brain is just like, I don't want to be here, I don't want to do this. And if you don't take that over, man, that can take you out. And that was kind of the platform and that I used to kind of work with almost everything.
Mm-hmm. What sorts of things do you see like that can help cross over? I mean, the ultimate goal of what we're doing with martial arts is to help people's lives get better, right? Um, what sorts of training, like how much physical training, how much technique, like what amount of time, what sorts of things do you give people as a strategy to get that mental toughness, to sort of face their fears and go after what it is ever they want, right? Like fear is the biggest thing probably holding people back from having the life that they want and going after the things they want to go after. You know, what do you say to the students, right, when they're first coming in the door? Right?
Well, I think first and foremost is obviously they came into the door, right? They did the biggest thing right there.
Which is like the hardest step a lot of times for
hardest
people
step.
is to come on, consistent, committed training.
And that's what my thing is. If you can come in and you know that you're going to be training, even if it's only Tuesday and Thursday for this hour, there it is. That's your first committed step, and you start making sure that.
And you will be better to the people in your life because you block that time off for yourself.
Yeah, I mean
For
that's
sure.
huge because
You're going to see results pretty quick.
And one thing that I've done for a long, long time, and I've done it for years, is the first thing I do is I get up and I make my bed right away. That's the first thing I do, and I make it super as tight as I can, and that becomes like this starting point. And then all of a sudden there's been all these speeches and what people do with their morning routines and stuff. But that was something I've done for a long time. I get up, make my bed. There it is, the first task, right? That's done. And then I do the same thing. I go to the bathroom, do what I gotta do, and I brush my teeth right away. So I clean my mouth and I have dental care. And then I do my shower and I do my stuff in my shower. It's like this routine. And in my shower I have the things that I say, oh wow, this is gonna be the greatest day of my life. I'm always expanding my abilities and skills. I have the power to choose my state of mind. I choose to be optimistic. And that's, I just look at that. Even though I see it every single day, that's what my brain sees right away, and I say it out loud to myself. As simple as that is, and as goofy as that is, I do it.
Yeah, but the idea of developing a habit or a routine is going to be really key to getting results. But then balancing that with like getting more out of yourself, right? Like change can be be painful and scary, and that's where the mental toughness comes in. Like, but over time, I think the more often that you're doing difficult things, the easier it becomes to change up your routine. Without a routine,
You're not as fearful.
You're soft, and you have no ability, you have no basis
Routine is huge.
to push higher and to get more.
And I've been listening to a lot of stuff now, and a lot of really successful people, they have a very, very specific morning routine because that starts the day and it sets the pace of what they're going to do for the rest of the day. And so, I kind of had one, but now I really set that time, and I make my smoothie, I do my coffee, and I sit down at my computer, and I have a course that I do in the morning, and I have to get through that, section, or I set a time, and I got to do it to this time, and then I got to go, and it becomes this routine where every day I start to do something that now is new, because getting up and training, that has been kind of just is. But now I'm trying to go into another direction and trying to learn about speaking and how to tell a story and how to do it. It's to me it's fun because it's a new venture.
Yeah.
And now I'm pushing myself now I'm going out to Santa Barbara where I'm going to be at this acting school with some people, and I'm going to be like, whoa, this is brand new. Totally people I don't know. Which to me has been really fun. It's been a blast.
You got to move outside your comfort zone or else it shrinks, right?
Yep.
So I think like one of the big things that people are always wondering about, and with your experience in particular, is how do you deal with people that compete in mixed martial arts, when they're losing or after they lose, or take even wrestling with little kids. Like how do you deal with, how do you help them face the facts?
The biggest thing, especially now that I'm coaching high school wrestling and obviously coming up and even helping a youth program in wrestling, instead of being like results oriented, like you got to win, win. Our thing is we want you to be more effort oriented. How much did you push? Did you give your all?
Yeah.
Win, lose, or draw. If you gave your all, that's all you could have done.
Absolutely.
But when you go out there and you don't do your best, and you can not do your best and win. And I'll look at you and go, you could have done better.
Yeah.
That wasn't your best. Even though you won, that wasn't a real victory because that was an easy kid that you just kind of coasted through when you could have done stuff to really make yourself better to get ready for this next kid that's really good.
Yeah.
So you can win and be lazy. And that's not what we're after. Or you could lose, but you lost giving everything you could. And we'll praise that kid like, man, you just pushed it to the end. That was the best I've ever seen you wrestle. So we're trying to change it right away instead of, dude, what were you thinking out there?
Yeah.
You totally got flattened on your face. Like, but if he's going for it, because we've just been telling him all week, you got to shoot more. You got to, and then he shoots and he fails, and you go, dude, what happened? You shot and you got. Now what did you tell the kid? I'm not shooting anymore.
Yeah.
Instead of, man, that was a great shot.
Mm-hmm.
You went after it, and you kept going after it. Now all we have to do is we got to do a little bit more of this, and now you're starting to get more comfortable.
And he doesn't fear failure.
Yes.
So it's more about, like, when you're trying to develop mental toughness, it's more about starting with the idea of it's more about how you're doing and not the actual results necessarily. And over time, the results are just going to be a side effect of having that attitude.
Yeah.
If you think about,
That fear of failure is pretty powerful. If it's
it never goes away. You just learn how to talk yourself through it.
sure.
And every time you're in a situation that requires mental toughness, right?
Yeah.
It becomes habitual almost the more you do it. And that's why you see these really high-level performers nowadays doing crazy stuff.
And you think about even the verbiage that's coming out. You're either winning or learning instead of winning and losing. You lost, dude. No, did you learn something out of that loss? Are you going to be able to take this back into your training room and use it as and something that we see the kids coming off the mat and they're super mad about the loss that they had and they're just like, oh, and we're like, okay, now are you going to remember what you feel like right now so you fuel yourself for that next time? And by the time Monday comes around, they're like, do, and they're like, man, did you forget what you felt like when you lost? Yeah. Sometimes you got to bring that back too. Say, man, I don't want to feel that way again. I remember what that felt like, and I want to push myself harder so I know that at least, man, I gave my best and my all. Mm-hmm. And that becomes that habit. Even drilling, even doing the most mundane things, which I think takes a lot of mental toughness. It's easy to go out there and just grab alive. You don't have to think. But when you have to sit there and drill and be methodical and be really disciplined and get this amount of reps in, that's where mental toughness comes in.
Well, I think if you know where you're not good, and then you can start to fix it on your own, your teacher or your coach can help guide you. But when you really start to improve, it's when you start to see yourself as you really are, and you start to see, oh, I need this part more, right?
Yeah.
That's really like a high level.
Well, there's Tim Grove. He's a trainer for Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. And he said that, he kind of makes this separation between, different types of athletes. And the highest level, he calls it, are cleaners. And they are 100% self-motivated. They're in there before everybody. They know exactly what they need to do. And they just get it done. And they don't think, they remember the stuff that they didn't perform well on. Mm-hmm. They don't remember, oh man, I scored 32 points in this game. No, they remember the 3 shots they missed that they should have got. And so the next day, by themselves, without anybody else, they're in the room just going over it. Wayne Gretzky was like that, with just shooting pucks, hundreds of pucks. Not even putting his skates on, just getting out there, and he'd get done with it because he knew he had to be better. And he wasn't better for anybody other than himself. He looked in the mirror and said, you can be better. He said that's what kind of separates the guy who's really good and then the guy who's great. Even at that highest level of professional athletes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. So you mentioned that guy. Do you have any, for the listeners out there, do you have any recommended, I don't know, books, movies, other podcasts like that you really that stick out in your mind?
Well,
That are like I think that you're trying to get smart about this stuff. That the knowledge is out there.
yeah.
Right?
One thing that I've been doing a lot of reading and listening to Brendan Burchard,
Mhm.
and went to his conference, the High Performer Academy live, and surrounded by literally sometimes like billionaires, and then people really successful and people that are trying to become successful, and they're doing their best to get out of their comfort zone. But Brendan Burchard, he's got a bunch of really cool books that you can read, like the one that we have right now, which I'm trying to get, which I bought a whole bunch of to give to people, the High Performers Habits, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he also has the Motivation Manifesto, which is a pretty cool book. It's a totally different style, right? And then Relentless, which is Tim Grove. He just brings up his upbringing and the stories behind these great athletes and how they push themselves, and he also has a podcast and
Tim Grove.
yeah.
What about that movie Miracle?
Oh, one of my favorite movies ever.
Is that with Kurt Russell?
Yes,
It
and
is,
it's
yeah.
about the dream team, right? The American,
Yeah.
the first, all a bunch of college players that were coached, and even rivals that came together, and it is one of the greatest movies to watch. I watch
That's awesome.
it multiple times a year. That one and like Rudy,
Mm-hmm.
things that are really motivating.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact is, it kind of cool because a lot of those guys are at the University of Minnesota, and some of them are in the area now. They're bank managers. They're scouts for the pros. They're coaching. Almost every single one of those guys went on to become very successful in whatever field they went into.
Right on. Right on. Well, I would say that's about it. So thanks for listening, everybody. If you like what you're hearing, make sure you rate us and review us on iTunes. Share the podcast around. Like us on Facebook. You can tweet at Greg Nelson MMA. He's on Instagram. What's your Instagram?
Yeah, at Greg Nelson MMA.
Got anything else to add?
Well, hey guys, I would say definitely do something that puts you a little bit out of your comfort zone, and just kind of keep pushing. Right? You don't have to make these giant killer leaps. Just do something that you have to really focus on, commit to, and then set a goal and go after that goal. All right? Just that alone is going to make you mentally tougher.
All right. Until next time.
All right.